third episode of the coding tutorial series. This episode we're going to talk about adding motors and sensors. So first we're going to cover if you're on VEXcode, because VEXcode there's less steps involved, a little bit simpler. So you just click this little chip looking thing up here, and it opens up the devices tab. You click add a device, choose what device you want to add, and then you pick what port the device is in, you give it a name, click done. What that does is it will write a line of code about the device. On Visual Studio Code, we don't have a interface to use to add devices. We have to do it by writing out the lines of code ourselves. This isn't too difficult once you get the hang of it. So to start, we're just going to start simple and add a motor. So to add a motor, you want to type in the word motor, then do a space, and you now want to give the motor a name. Now, when I'm naming things, I like to keep the name kind of short, so I have less to type, and I try to make the purpose of whatever I'm naming clear, so that way I don't have to second guess what it does. So let's just say that this motor is moving an arm, so I'm just going to call it arm. Then you do an equal sign. After the equal sign, you put the word motor again, and you put parentheses. Now, inside the parentheses, we're going to put the configuration. So first thing you have to tell it is what port the motor is in. So to do that, we put the word port in all caps, and then we put the port number. So let's just say this motor is in port 5. Then we do a comma. Next up, we want to tell it what type of motor it is. Now, there are green motors, blue motors, and red motors. Each one have their own gear ratios. Green motors have 18:1 gear ratio, red motors have a 36:1 ratio, and blue motors have a 6:1. Since this is an arm, it's probably going to need the extra torque. So let's make this into a red motor. So that'd be a ratio of 36:1. So we just type it in like that. Do a comma, and then the next part is optional, and it depends on if your motor is reversed or not. So if your motor is reversed, then you do comma, true. If it's not reversed, you leave it blank, and then finish out the line with a semicolon. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how to add in a motor group. Adding in a motor group is actually very, very easy. All we have to do is have two motors first of all, so I'm just going to make a second version of this. And now the arm is being controlled by two motors. So to make a motor group, all you have to do is do motor underscore group, do a space, name the group. So we're going to call this group arm group. Then you do an equal sign, put the word motor group again. Then in the parentheses this time, we're just going to put the names of the different motors. So it's arm A, comma, arm B. And if there's more motors, we just put in more, but this one only has two, so we just put those two, and then finish off the line of a semicolon. So those are the basics of motors. Let's talk a bit about sensors now. So there's a lot of different sensors, and it'd take a lot of time to cover them all, so I'm just going to cover the most common ones that you'll probably be using. So let's start off with a inertial sensor. So to do that, you start off by typing the word inertial. I spelled that wrong. Inertial. Then you do a space, then you name the inertial sensor. So we're just going to call this one PID sensor, because that's usually what you use them for. Do an equal sign, then put the word inertial again. Put parentheses, and inside the parentheses, you tell it what port it's going to be in. So let's say this inertial sensor is in port 3. So you put the word port in all capitals, then put the number 3. And there we go. Next, let's just do a rotation sensor. So to do that, just put the word rotation. Let's say that this rotation sensor is on the arm to see how far up it's moving. So we're just going to call it like arm rotate, do a space, put an equal sign, and then put the word rotation again, followed by parentheses, and then in parentheses you put what port it's in. So let's say that this thing is in port 1. And then with rotation sensors, You can do the same thing you can do with motors, and if you want it to be reversed, you just type in comma, true. If not though, then you can just leave that blank and finish off the line with a semicolon. All the other type of sensors that we're going to be talking about in this video are 3-wire sensors, and to start adding them in, we really quick have to go right up here, right underneath where it says namespace Vex. We just want to put the word brain with a lowercase b, do a space, and then put the word brain with an uppercase B, and finish off that line with a semicolon. That's mainly just here to let us use the 3-wire ports. Let's start by adding in a digital out, which is what you'll use for the pneumatic controllers. So let's say that the claw on this robot's arm is pneumatic powered, so for that we need a digital out. So we just type in the word digital out. You do a space, put the name, we're just going to call it claw, because it's for a claw. Put an equal sign, put the word digital out. Parentheses, this is where things change just a tiny bit. We're still going to put in the port, but because it's a 3-wire port, we have to put brain dot 3-wire port dot, and then you can put in whatever port it's in. So let's say this one is in port A, and then finish off the line with a semicolon. For the last one, let's just do a limit switch. You just type in the word limit, do a space, do a space. Let's say that this limit switch is used to see if the arm's all the way down. So we'll just put arm limit, do an equal sign, type in the word limit, parentheses, and this is a 3-wire port. Again, we have to put brain dot 3-wire port dot, let's say it's in port B, and then finish line with a semicolon. Now, by this point, you've probably gotten onto the pattern. Next, we're going to go over a device that all of you are going to need, and that is the controller. So let's put that at the very top. So to do that, you type in the word controller. You give the controller a name. We're just going to call it controller 1. Do an equal sign, put the word controller, parentheses, and then in the parentheses you have to put the type of controller. For most of you, that just means you put the word primary. Very, very rarely, some teams will have multiple controllers controlling their robot at the same time. In this case, you'd want to put the word partner for your controller instead of primary. And that's the basics of adding in motors and sensors. Before this video ends, there are 2 tools that I'd like to direct your attention to, and links to both of these will be in the video description. The first one is the VEXcode API reference, and this has a list of all the different commands that you could use with different sensors. So let's say, for example, you wanted to know a bit more about the different commands for distance sensors. Just pull up this, and then bam, you can see all the different commands for distance sensing, and if you click on one, it gives you more info about it. The other thing is the Vex forum, which is basically just a place where people ask their robotics related questions, and there's programming tags, so you can just go and see what other programmers have been doing recently and what issues they've been having, and if they've been having similar issues to you, so you can kind of learn and grow. Now that you have all this knowledge down, we are finally ready to start coding things, which we will do next episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.